Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the last show of the year. It's going to be a bit of an interesting one today, so you just have to bear with us. You know, always the last show is the one where everything tails off and you're either rushing to finish things or you've got nothing to do. So we've got a bit of both. well, sort of. So anyway, what we'll do today is I want to just go through the tailings off of the boxes that we've been doing. And over in the corner here, you'll see that I've got two unfinished boxes, and then right over here, there's the finished box. We'll get that out and I'll show you what the story is with that before we, when we get to doing the finishing. Now, one of the things that I did with that box in the corner was I rushed through it, basically because I didn't like the box. I rushed through to get it finished, and I forgot to put a handle on it. The handle is the lifter that goes on the front of the box, right? So all of the other boxes you can see in the shelf here, they've all got some sort of lifter and some sort of they're generally not latches. They're just a lifting mechanism so that you can actually get hold of it to lift it up. Basically because I generally don't put latches in, I don't put locks in these smaller boxes. It's really not worth the effort. So, but then again, it's also my style of box. So that is where we're at today. I'm just going to show you a number of different lifting systems that we use. Now, I've got to glue things, so I've got to let things dry a little bit before I can actually put a finish on. So I'm going to glue things up, and we're going to sort of get out of order. I'm going to go backwards a bit after I've glued some things together. Now, in this box here, this is the box that we used, that we changed all of the framework timbers on to jacaranda, because all the other ones were silky oak, and this one we changed to jacaranda. In the process of doing that, we realised that all of the internal componentry that we had in the box was all silky oak as well, and it didn't match up to what we'd done, so I had to pull it all apart and rebuild the drawers. And we went through the process of actually building the drawers last week. All I've done is I've just sanded them up and finished them off so that they actually fit nice. So they all sit in there quite nicely now. And of course we demonstrated the little bridge lifters that we made. It was just a matter of gluing things in place after last week's show, and then sanding things off. As well as that, we had to do the bottom of the box as well. So we finished up by sanding the bottom a little bit, or planing most of that off. And it's glued there and actually not in the middle. You can see there's a little bit of movement there. So that allows your base material to actually move a little bit, so it doesn't lock the whole thing together. So very important point when you're doing those sorts of things. So when it came to making the lifter that go on the front of the box, most of the time what I do is I try to match the lifter up to something else that's on the box, and most of the time it's the panel in the top. The panel contrasts with various other bits and pieces on the box, and I've done that. I've made this little fancy little lifter out of the same material as the lid on the box. But when you put it on the box and you sit it on the front, it looks out of place. Now, you may not like the shape. I was just trying to sort of experiment a little bit. I've made them this shape before. I don't actually like the shape anyway, but after a while. But the thing is that the colour of the timber doesn't match up to the rest of the box, and it looks out of place. So the best thing to do was to make something out of the jacaranda, which is on the framework. So I made this little one. This is a much nicer version.
Very nice.
So it's a nice cute little version, and it's just got a little flat bit on the bottom there where you can actually put your finger under it and lift it up when you open the lid. Okay. Now, when you sand the boxes up, I've got this one sanded right to 800, and what I need to do now is attach this before I actually put a finish on. One of the problems with, and this is where I said to you earlier, I put a finish on that other box before I made the handle, which meant I couldn't glue it because glue generally doesn't stick to oil. So I had to come up with another way of actually attaching a handle. Now, this is just a flat piece of material which will glue on there. It'll stay there because of the type of glue I'm using. But I couldn't do that on the other box. I had to make something different. So let me glue this in place, and then we'll go backwards a little bit, and I'll talk to you about different types of handles and things like that. I've got another glue up to do as well. So my first thing is to visually set that so I've got it in the middle. Now I could grab a ruler and I could measure up distances from each end and make it sort of about in the middle like that, or I could find the centre of that. But sometimes your shape doesn't warrant being in the middle because of the way it looks, and it's all a visual thing. So what I'll do is I'll just turn around here and I'll set that myself as my visual reference. Now you can do it any which way you like, but I'm just trying to get a sort of even pieces on either side here and just make it look like it's in the right place. As you can see, the bulk of the lifter is actually on the right hand side, and this is just a tail off, so maybe if we take it a little bit that way, and that looks pretty much where it's going to go. So a little bit of glue. Don't want much. We don't want it to spray out or squeeze out around the object. I better put a pencil mark
Yeah,
there.
I was thinking that.
I'm just going to put a tiny little pencil mark that I can remove right on the tip. So I know the tip is going to go there, the rest of it will go where it has to go. Now, the lifter itself, we're flat on the bottom, on the back I should say, and I've got it tapered. You can see it's much wider at the bottom than the top. I've rounded over the corner edges just to soften it a little bit, and then on the bottom of it I've got a little flat section, or it's actually curved. It's curved in this way, and that's so that you get your finger under there and pull it up. All right, so let's put a bit of glue on here. Now, the only reason I'm doing it in this order is because I want it to dry so I can put a finish on the box before the end of the show. And it should be dry enough. It's not going to go overboard. I don't want too much. I don't want any squeeze out really. That was my pencil mark. And it's flat on the bottom. And that will go there. And I'll just put a clamp on that. One of these clamps. I don't often use these, but they come in handy for this sort of thing. You just want that to sit there like that. I might put a second one on there. I could use my little Bessie clamps, but I think I'll use this just like that. Okay, now let's sit that aside to dry. I don't want it to fall over. And we'll talk about the other ones. This I will keep for later. Now, one of the things that I do, if I've got a little square, spare piece of material left over, instead of throwing it in the scrap bin, I try to think of what to do with it. Now, in this box, I've got lots of little pieces of material that I've cut a 40mm hole with. So with my 40mm hole saw, I've cut out a whole heap of different pieces of material. Now I do that at the time of, you know, like I might be making a box and I might have some spare stuff left over. I've got bits of she oak, I've got forest oak, I've got rose mahogany, red banksia, a little bit of hewn, she oak. There's all sorts of different timbers in there, and this is going to end up with it as well. Now the round ones, they look like this when I've got them done. I'll get this second box. I just want to glue this in place as well, it's going to be part of the show. This one, what I've made is the red banksia. So it's a piece of red banksia, and that's what it was. I just had some left over, so I cut some, and this is what the shape is when it's finished. Right, it's just rounded over, again tapered from top to bottom. It's got a flat section underneath so you can lift it, and it just sits on like that. Now one of the other timbers that I could have used there was a piece of cedar, right? So that little piece of cedar, but it doesn't fit. The colour doesn't look that nice. It blends in.
Yeah, it doesn't pop.
It doesn't
pop.
Yeah, it doesn't pop. So that'll end up in the box, and I'll probably use that on a different box. Whereas this one will get glued in place here. And so therefore we have a different shape again. So that looks quite nice. So I'll just open that out. Again, glued in place. Find my centre. This one has to be centred because it's a round object. So what I'm doing here is just measuring to centre.
You've got a good eye. Years of practice.
Years of practice, yep. So that's pretty close to centre. Just going to put a little mark on there where I need to put it. Now I'll put the mark on there, and I don't know if you can hone in on that, Pam. You can see the mark is just on the edge there, and it's not going to interfere with the glue. So I can sand that off before I actually put the finish on. So I get rid of that mark on it away. So now a little bit of glue. Just on the back. So there's lots of different types, lots of different shapes. Like I said, we're going to go backwards a little bit. This time I'm going to use a little Bessie clamp. Just make sure it's all lined up correctly. And there we have it. So that's going to stay there. It's nice. The important thing to remember is the back of it has to be dead flat, so you need to make sure that you've got a flat surface on the back of it. Right, so they're the little round ones that I make. Got lots of those lying around, so I could make them as I need them, but then again I don't often do that. This one is a different one altogether. When I made this box, or when I put the finish on this box, I forgot to put a handle on it. So I had to figure out a way of making a handle that actually looked like it fitted into the rest of the box. And this looks more like a suitcase handle really, to grab a hold of, but it's quite an effective little handle. So again, another different thing, bit of variety. I've made a smaller version of it. As you can see, this is a little bit smaller. And that's what I'm going to put onto that box there. Alright. And so that's what it looks like. You can see I've got a couple little plugs in it. You don't have to use welding wire like I have. You can use a piece of dowel if you like. It's just a bit small in that area to do that. But it's also just quite a nice little handle. This one here, you need to drill a couple of holes to actually glue it in place. Now, I've drilled the holes so that I can just pop it in, but I've still got to glue the whole surface. And what we can do here is glue around here. So a little bit of glue like that, and then put a little bit of super glue in the hole. Be very careful you don't overlap, just enough to go in there. Just be careful when you drill that hole that you don't drill all the way through the box. And that's on there. And clamp it down. Just put a little bit of excess off here. And so that one's done as well. So that's getting them all on there. Now, how do you make that little gadget? What I've got here in this box is all the little odd handles that I tend to have lying around the place. Just get rid of this box. I'll drop it. Bit of conversation in that.
You know, when we were talking about lifters the other evening, and I said, you know, you should make a large butterfly shape to put on the front as a lifter, and we discussed it. Aussie's come up with the same idea. So
like that.
Yes, but there you go. Ask and there it is, Aussie.
I'm not going to use it on this box.
No,
if you look in the box here, you'll see what I did. And I always say, if you're going to do something, make a lot of them. Do it a number of times so that you get it right all the time. Now, these are little handles that go on a drawer. These are little plug handles I've turned. You've seen me use those. You've seen me use these little hue and pine ones. There's this type of handle as well, which I used on a little cabinet we made a couple of years ago. So that's in walnut. There's this very small version of the little flat ones I've just shown you. So that could be on a very small box. And then I've got these, which I've made out of a number of different timbers. So there's quite a few of them, just so that I could show you how to make them a little bit easier. So lots of different things in my little box of tricks. So I always spend a little bit of time trying to make things work properly. At least I try to anyway, apart from all the blunders we obviously see during the year, which we haven't had it for a couple of days.
Shush.
So I think it's time to have one.
No.
All right.
Don't whistle it up.
How to make this handle. The first thing you need to do is get yourself a piece of material that you want to make the handle out of. Now, I've got two bits of material here. I've got a piece of myrtle and I have a piece of silky oak. Now, as you can see, much wider than our handle is. You can see I'm only going to cut a little bit off that. but for safety reasons I make it a little bit wider. Right? So this is what we do. So measure up piece of material. I've got a pencil here somewhere. So all I'm going to do is, and make sure this is square when you cut it. So let's say 70 millimeters. Half of 70 is 35, so I'm going to mark the centre. And I want, say, a 20 millimetre or 10, that's 20 millimetre groove. Now the reason I've gone to that distance there, I'm going to cut this off here. I've got this much material on both ends. On this one here I don't have so much. Once I cut the rebate in there, I don't have a lot of material in there, and so what I've done is I've used a piece of welding wire as my plug. If you're going to make this bigger, you can actually use a piece of dowel in there, so you're actually not using a bit of metal, but you can use a piece of dowel to sit up. No, it's not going to.
That's okay. I just wanted to get a side profile.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut this off. I'll leave those measurements there. Actually, I might square those lines across to make it easier for myself. This makes it a little bit easier to line things up when you've got your markings on there. Okay, so my trench here is going to be in that area there. So let's dock this off. So over to the saw. Got my 70 mil. Now the router bit that I'm going to use to create my little trench there is our core box bit. Now this is the smaller version. You can make it bigger if you like. You can make a bigger one. So it's just the core box bit. Now when we set the height, we've got to set it so that we have a little bit of material in the middle here. We don't want to cut all the way through. Okay, so that's probably, I'll get my LARK tool and actually tell you how much that is. That distance there is 4 millimeters. Okay, so the trench is 4 millimeters deep. Actually, no, it's not. It's 3 millimeters deep. And that's on a piece of 10 millimeter material. This is 12 mil. So 3 millimeters will give you a depth about that deep, which is fine. That's adequate. All right. So let me set the height to 8 mil. That's 3 mil. Somebody asked me the other day, I think it was in the comments of last week, why I don't use the winder to adjust the height. What I've found with the winder, and this is my personal thoughts on it, is it becomes another piece of tool or another tool that I have to have stored somewhere here and be able to find it when I need it. It ends up getting lost amongst all the, as you can see, the bench is actually crowded with stuff. I don't have a lot of room on it, but it becomes a little bit crowded, and so therefore I try to minimise how much material I've got, or how many bits and pieces I've got lying around, so that when I'm doing my work, I'm not stopping and starting looking for parts. So I don't bother using it. I find it just as easy to work underneath the table. It's not an issue to me. It's not a problem. I don't have a back issue that prevents me from bending over and actually doing things the hard way, or might not be the hard way, but the practical way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a rebate here, and I'm going to cut another one on the other side. Now, because I've got a piece of material that's pretty wide, and the reason I've got it wide is so that I've got something to hang on to when I'm going through the processes, I can actually cut another one on the other side of the piece of timber. So I can make two at a time. And that sort of plays into what I've done over on the thing there, where I've got a box full of them.
They look like a box of chocolates.
They look like a box of
yeah,
chocolates.
boxed chocolates.
Boxed chocolates. Who said that?
Irene, our lovely Irene.
Irene.
She's not wrong though.
Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to set up a fence. Irene. Hello, Irene. So what I want to do here is I just want to make sure that I get my centre right. Oops, gone back to front. So I'm just setting in the middle of my router bit, so that the edge of the router bit touches my line.
It's very hard to see, so black in there.
Okay, so you can get.
But it's all right.
I shifted it. What I'm going to do . Now set . So what I want is just a little bit of material at the front edge that we can actually, so we can grab hold of it. If it does not right, we'll just do it again. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to put that on there, just drop it on there and run it along. And then I'll just measure it. I may need to adjust or readjust here. I'll find my earmuffs. So ears on, everybody. So what I want to do now is I want to make sure that my distance from that point to this point is exactly the same as that point to that point. So if you set your LARK tool to there, we turn it around, I've got to take a tiny little bit more off that end there. Okay, so I've got to move this one that way 0.5 millimetre.
It's only a 15th, isn't it?
Yep, tiniest little bit. Okay, ears on. And that's perfect. So now it's just a matter of doing the others. Okay, so now I've got something to grab hold of, right? So the next step is to round over these parts here. So I need to round those over, and then we're going to curve it and take the soft edges off it as well. Okay, so across to our radius jig. Okay, so I've got my radius jig set up, so all I'm going to do is round over my corners. So now that I've got those rounded over, what I need to do is now curve over the rest of it. So we go over and we change the route a bit. I actually have to change my fence here as well. So the fence that I used for this is the one that I have set up for my spiral bit, or my TSRW12. So it only has a single slot in it, whereas the one that I need is the one that I've got set up for my 45 degrees and my rounding over bit. So that will go on there. The rounding over bit I'm using here is the 912, which is the quarter inch round over. I'll get rid of some of these bits. I hope you're finding this interesting, because I actually quite enjoy doing little things like this. Okay, now just set height. Now bring this across. And what I'll do here is I'll put my piece of timber on the bearing and then run the fence up to the piece of timber. Now normally I would put the dust extractor on this, but I'm not going to do that today. It's really not necessary because I'm only doing a small bit. So now it's just a matter of rounding over the bits. So ears on, everybody. Now all I need to do now is I'll spend a bit of time sanding that. I won't do it here now because it'll take forever to actually do that. And I'll just sand up the whole of the thing and make it nice and smooth all the way around. So I'll do that for the whole thing. Now what I need to do is I need to dock the end off here so that we get that little piece there. So over to the drop saw. And this is where you can actually start guessing as to how big you want the handle, how wide you want the handle, and so on. So I want the handle about there. I'm just a little bit shy of the centre of the valley. Something to hang on to it with. It's just a matter of this. So ears on, everybody. And there's my little handle. Now, if you don't want this much material here, you just bring your cut further closer to the edge of that. If you want more, well then you just go the other way. And so we end up with two little handles. Now, you can drill a hole in here and put a piece of dowel in there if you like. I'm going to put a piece of welding wire, which is adequate for what I want. Now my welding wire is actually 3/32 thick, so it's fairly, very thin. If I was going to use a piece of dowel, I'd have to use a piece of quarter or something like that, something very, very small, hard to find. You can make it yourself, not a problem. But what we need to do is we need to actually find a centre to put that in. So in my machine vise here, I have a little piece of support material. Now make sure your piece of support material is perfectly parallel, so when it sits in the vise, sits there, and I'm just going to sit that on top of there. Now you can guess your centre, or you can grab a tool. Now I've got a sliding bevel here that I'm just going to set to 45 degrees. I've got a little one. It's only a little sliding bevel, and I'm just going to run 45 degrees from the corner. Do the other side. Can't actually see me doing what I'm doing here, but you will see the result. And so that's given me a centre of those little sections. I'll just do the other one while I'm at it, so I can drill both at the same time. Get this done quickly so I can get on with the finishing. I'm often asked about finishing. I have basically a standard technique that I use for most of my boxes. It's one that I've found works every time. Okay. Over to the drill press. Now I normally what I would do is I put a piece of tape on to give me depth, but I don't need a lot of depth because I'm not going to put a big piece of material in there. do it while I'm doing things. Now these are going to need a sand up. I'll do that later. I'm not going to do it right away. Now I don't need much because remember the thickness of your lids is generally only somewhere between 10 and 12 millimetre thick. So we don't need a lot of, I might do one at a time. So that fits in there perfectly. You just nip it off. And do the other end. Just a little bit of super glue, don't overdo it. Now I'm only guessing about 6 or 7 millimetres, 5 millimetres. You don't need a lot, just need something to sort of give it a bit of purchase. Like I said, you can always put a bit of dowel in here. There's a lot of different things you can use for this sort of thing. You don't actually have to use any of this at all if you don't want. You could just glue the thing straight on. But I find that if you've got any sort of leverage at all, you'll need some sort of support. The flat ones generally don't have any leverage in them. Little round lifters. But these, because they stick out a little bit, they get a little bit of leverage when you pull on it. So having that support in there is quite a good idea. So they'll get sanded up and they'll just get glued straight onto the job. So quite a nice little handle. And you can make them out of all the sorts of bits of material. It doesn't have to be the same as the box. Like I said, I've got a whole heap of them there and they're all made from different materials. These ones are a little bit shorter. There's a she oak one. New Guinea rosewood. Jacaranda. Red Banksia. So they match up to any of the boxes that I've been doing lately. So now I have some silky oak ones as well. So they just go in the box. They'll stay in the box until such time as I need them. I've shown you how to fit them. So now it's just a matter of finishing. Now the finish that I'm using, I've been spruiking this stuff all year, actually 2 years now, I think. Works really well for the type of finish that I like on my boxes. Now you will have to work out which ones you like best. And the only way to do that is to experiment. Have a look at the finishes you find on other pieces of work. Choose what you want, and you will find as you work through finishing that quite a lot of the finishes have a different effect on different types of timber. And let's start with this one. And that's where you need to experiment a little bit. Okay, so that's not quite hardened or set, but as you can see, it's going to work quite nicely. Just have a sip. A cup of tea. Have a look at this one. So that looks quite nice on there. And this is the one that we glued in place. So that's quite solid now. Okay, so that's quite a nice box, and quite a nice handle for that box. Okay, finishing. How do we go about this? Let's get this out of the way. We'll get something up there just to cover the table. I've already got the bottom of that finished, so I might do that first. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you what the colours actually come up like on all the different timbers. This is a black-heart sassafras, and it was really dull. If you go back to the early parts when I was building this box or building this lid, this was really dull until I put the finish on, and now you can see the outline of this part of the finish and how it affects the whole of the box, and it makes it look really, really nice. So it sits basically like that, and you can see it really does give the box a fair bit of lift. I might use that. Just clamp this down so it's not going to slide away on me. Got 10 minutes, and in that 10 minutes I just want to put a bit of finish on. I'll show you how I put my finish on. And it's fairly crude. I wouldn't say rude, but I'd say crude. Gloves. Tammy's getting a bit hot, she's had to turn the fan on.
Oh, it's just really built up in here.
It's got quite warm. Okay, now, the finish. This is the finish that I use. Now, if you get onto, we used to have a special, if you bought $50 worth of stuff, you get I can't remember what the discount was. There was a bit of a discount.
It was 5%
5% or something like that. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, so don't quote me. And you also get a little promotional pot of stuff as well, if you bought more than $50 worth from them. So what we've got here is I've got the Chinese wood oil, and this one here is just a wax, right? So just a white wax. We'll put some of that on the other box over there just to show you how it gives it its lift, but we'll be using that one. Chinese wood oil comes in a bottle like that when you buy the bigger bottle. So I decant it into a smaller jar, just like that. Keep that sealed all the time. Now, here's the rub. Here's the pretty stuff. So just with a brush, like I say, crude, just brush it on. Nothing fancy about this, it's just brush it on. So make sure you get into all your corners. And look how that colour comes up.
show the top side and
Yeah.
then flip it back.
Like that. Even the colour of the silky oak changes a lot. I'll just get the inside of that done. Just make sure I'm down in all of the crevices. And these are cheap brush from Bunnings. You see that looks like that. Look how dull it is on the outside. Look at the difference. Just stunning when it comes up like that. It's sanded. I didn't do any sanding because sanding is a fairly boring process anyway. And most of you, I would imagine, have had some experience at sanding. You don't need to watch me sanding stuff. But look at that now. It's just beautiful. And the edges. Now this is going to soak it up, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it sit once I've got it finished. Plenty on there. Just make sure everything's covered. Give it a good soaking. In about 10 minutes or in a few minutes time, I'll show you what it looks like. See, at the moment when you get it side on, you can actually see that it's got, I don't know if you can see that, oh there, that looks really good. See how it's wet right through the whole thing, and it's just come up spectacularly. Alright, in about a few minutes you'll see when I talk about the fact that it soaks it up. Cedar is notorious for it because it's a very open poured timber. I'll do this lid as well. So first of all I have to take the lid off. I might do the bottom bit, but I'll do the lid. All of these have been sanded. I spent the week just getting things tidied up so that I could finish off these, or at least get some finish on them. I probably should have taken this off earlier. And notice I don't use an electric drill to actually undo the screws in these, because that's one way of tearing the thread out of the box with a screw hole. Okay, this one's going to get exactly the same treatment, but you'll see the difference in the colour of the inside first.
Very pink.
A lot pinker than.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Again, get all the way around. You can see that red banksia sucked all that up straight away. It just went dry straight off the bat. Okay, let's turn it over. Again, this is silky oak, red Banksia. Beautiful, that stuff, isn't it? You can see the differences in these. Straight after you're there, and you can see the silky oak actually highlights a little bit. And you can see that little handle, that little lifter, actually stands out a bit better than the other one on that was made from New Guinea rosewood. It's soaked that up really quickly, so I'll just put a bit more on. Make sure I get all the cracks and crevices. Okay, so when you look at that one now, you can see it's got the wet look. It's really soaked it up. Go back to that other one and you can see around here it's already dried out. You can see parts of it along here. Which one are you on, mate? Yeah, up the back here. See, that's dried out already.
Yeah.
The gloss from that little bit of gloss that runs across here, it doesn't extend across the piece. So all I'm going to do there is I'm just going to add a bit more. Let it soak it up. So now you can see that it's starting to get a little bit of character to these boxes, just from the colour of the timbers. Okay, this is the pretty one. You may think that one's prettier, these ones are even nicer. This one will even be nicer. So I'll just take the lid off. Hope everybody's having a lovely Christmas. Nice and relaxed, take it easy. If you're driving, drive safe. I do want to see everybody back here. Pammy and I are amazed at the wonderful support that we get from everybody on the channel. We really appreciate the fact that people are, well, for a start, still interested. Okay, this one. Let's have a look at this one. Now, the timber here is different. It's not silky oak, it's actually jacaranda, and it'll be a little bit more creamy. And the timber in the middle, a lot more honey coloured. It's New Guinea rosewood, the red version of the New Guinea rosewood. New Guinea rosewood has very wide ranges of colour. And this one was just the red bit out of the heart of the tree. Sometimes you'll find that it's a little bit greenish. This one is really red. That.
Just beautiful.
When you compare that to that, there's a big difference. Now, see what it looks like on this side. Oh,
Beautiful.
wow. I'm impressed. Back edge. You have to remember, I made these boxes probably 8 or 9 years ago. And we're only just now getting to finish them. So they've been hanging around a little bit.
But it is
seasoned.
It is a big stockpile though.
Oh yes, it is a big stockpile.
Going back to, oh gosh, eight years of shows.
8 years, 9 years of shows, 8 or 9 years. Look at that now. And that looks pretty nice with that little handle on there. And they're just the lids. And this, if you go back to this one here, you can see now that it's gone flat. And that's because it's soaked up all of that wood oil. I'm just going to keep putting it on until it can't take any more. A bit more on this one. Another coat on here. Now I'm going to let those set for a little while. And wipe them off afterwards. So just let me remove some of this.
They're all beautiful.
Comments. Lots of comments. What's Jim Carroll got to say there? There is a link to Constantia at the bottom of our show thing.
Yeah. So Jim, everybody was just thanking us for the shows.
Oh, good.
But we'd like to thank them for their support because we love doing them and we love people to learn about box making done well.
Oh.
JP says you're a factory today.
We are a bit of a factory today.
That's true, yeah.
Okay, I just want to do one of the drawers in this other box, and then I'm going to do a little bit of waxing.
Well, I think you might have to call it a day.
Why?
Because it's after 11.
After 11? Ozzy will still be watching.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was what the lifter looks like once it's got its colour on it. So the box itself is going to get a dose of colour. And look how the lifter actually stands out as soon as you put a bit of coat of finish on it. It's jacaranda with a silky oak base. Give everything a big, good drink. And you can see that it's got quite a nice little feature. And then we'll paint the outside. And the last thing I want to do before we close up today and for the year, is I just want to show you how I go about putting the wax, doing the waxing. And I'll do it on the box that I already had a coat of finish on. I'm just going to make sure I've got everything covered here. This can go and sit over with the other. Okay. And so that's come up quite nice too. So it's quite a nice little box. The lifter in it looks quite nice, nicely sanded. So put over there with that box. Finish. Okay, let's put this box over here. Now, this box has had 2 coats of Constantia oil, and it's been between, say, a day apart when I put the finishes on, and as you can see it looks a little bit flat. Now the wax is not going to make it shiny because I don't like shiny. I could use a piece of rag and just rub lots of wax in it, and you can see it actually gives it a little bit of a lift just by adding the wax. It doesn't have that dry look anymore, it just gives it a bit of a lift. I can do it that way. I'm only going to do the top, I'll do the rest of it later. I could do it that way, or I can use a little applicator. Now what we have here is I've got a little MIRKA. Again, there's a link to the MIRKAs below in our info, and on it I use these little Bigfoot pads. They're Velcro. Generally you buy those from Sydney Tools. They're just Velcroed on, and that's a bit of sponge. And I'll just put a little bit on there on that. This is just an applicator, so it's not actually doing a great deal except applying it. A bit more, so as you can see, they're not putting much on there. You can actually see now that that has made the surface of that a lot richer than it was before, just by adding the wax. Make sure it rubs in. Now normally I'd let that sit for a couple of hours before I actually polished it off. You can see that it has got a little bit more of a sheen than it had before. Not much. I'm not one for shiny, but I do like things looking a little bit natural. Now the other MIRKA I use is a little 12, and this little thing is an orbital, and it's a bigger wool polishing pad. Again, it's the same brand as the sponge one that I've got there. So, and from Sydney Tools, Bigfoot. I think they're made by Rupees.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And again, Velcro, little pad. The battery's not be flat in my little sander. So what I'm doing now is just polishing that off. Normally I would let it sit for a couple of hours before I actually polish it up. The reason it doesn't work probably is you didn't got the speed up. Now if you haven't got one of these little gadgets, you can do that by hand. It's hard work and you'll work up a sweat, but it is hard work and you can get a really nice finish on the top of the box. So
it makes it mellow.
It does.
Yeah.
And so there we have the top of the box. You can see it's just got that lovely finish on it, and it's brightened up that box no end. So that's pretty much it, I think. I'm going to do the same with the rest of the box. I'm going to sort of sort that out. I'll wipe those off. Well, I'll just get one of these. That'll be this one, which is the first one I did. You can see now that the finish it's not soaked in as much, which means that it's taken up as much as it can. If we go to the inside, you'll see that it's a little bit flatter in there, but with a piece of rag, we just wipe that off. Normally let it sit for an hour or two, and you should get that sort of finish on it. Now that only applies, and I reiterate that only applies if you have sanded correctly. If you're one of these people that gets to 180 and gets tired of sanding and decides that that's enough, then you're not going to get this result. You're going to get something far worse.
Rougher.
A little bit rougher, yeah. So, and you'll struggle with it, and you'll dislike it. You won't enjoy it. And anybody who looks at it goes, "Oh, you haven't finished it." So I do it to 800, and that's what it'll come up like. So they'll come up quite nice. So that's it.
That's it for 2024.
That's it for 2024. Now, Pammy and I'd like to thank everybody who supports us. We really appreciate it. As you're well aware, we don't get paid to do this. We do it because we love doing it, and we really appreciate the attention we get, and we're happy to answer questions and go through the thing. All I ask occasionally is you purchase something from us. So that would be helpful. But anyway, that's the go. So we'd like to wish you all a happy Christmas. I hope you have a very prosperous new year. We should be back by late January. We're not quite sure what date yet, but we'll have to work it out. And some of the things that we're going to be working on is they're going to finish the hinges, Aussie, so I'll get those done. At least I'll have bits of time to bit more experimenting with them. I haven't got them right yet, but I will get them right. I'll go through the process of actually building all of these little handles for you and show you how I do those ones there, because all I've shown you is how to make this one. There's the other one, so I'll go through that at some stage. One of the other things that we do, and I've been asked this a number of times, is the fences. How do we make the fences? So during next year sometime we'll actually make the fence. I've got a half a dozen dust hoods on their way, so they shouldn't be too far away from us, and so they're available. Our shop is open all over Christmas, New Year, so because we work from home, we don't generally go anywhere this time. It's just too busy going out, particularly when we're living in a holiday town. So if you wish to purchase something during the holidays, by all means do so. We are available for courses. If you wish to do a course, contact us and we can do something there and sort something out for you if you've got a bit of a break from your employees. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the year. So have a good one, everybody, and we will see you all next year.